thank you both. Next question, I guess, goes to Mr. Vavrek first. According to Dr. Palmer, the superintendent of schools, the 2009-2010 school budget is facing a 6.9% increase with no increase in services, simply by meeting our contractual obligations and inflationary healthcare costs. What specifically will you do as first selectman in this fiscal year to address this critical issue?
Well, one thing I'll do is I'll rebuild a relationship with the Board of Education, and I will continue to develop a relationship with Dr. Palmer. I will not micromanage the elected volunteer Board of Education, and will have to drill down deep into school expenses, curriculum, salary, benefits, extracurricular. Controlling education spending while maintaining our commitment to good education is a must. But you have to know that controlling spending and good education do not have to be two separate issues.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Buzi?
One of the most important things we do is how we fund our education budget. And I've worked closely with Dr. Palmer, and when there was some opportunity to work with the Board of Education, I've worked with them. But the bottom line is you must bring forth a reasonable budget. I stood in this auditorium on January 22nd of this year, and I asked residents, predominantly parents, how much they'd be willing to spend on education. Would it be 3%? I asked for a show of hands, plenty of hands. 4%, 5%. When I got to 6 and 7%, there was no hands. So the key thing is a reasonable budget, and I'm willing to work with the superintendent and the Board of Education to deliver a reasonable budget. Also, we need to forget about politics after the budget gets out of the Board of Finance and all work together to ensure that we have a united team going to pass the budget. That happens in other towns. In this town, it doesn't. And there's a whole lot of reasons for it, but they're not acceptable.
Okay, any rebuttal, Mr. Vavrek?
Sure. My opponent has stated that the Board of Education is a fractured unit, but yet test scores in May were the highest in the region. The Board of Education must be commended for the fact that we did achieve this rise in many of our test scores, some of the best in the region. This is a good showing that the Board of Education has worked well with our superintendent, leaving politics aside and implementing new programs and enhancing good ones. I'm very happy with our Board of Education, but again, we have to look to control spending. And also, the fact that there's budget meetings between December and February, and first selectmen rarely show up. I'll be there from day one.
That's time, I'm afraid. Mr. Buzi, any rebuttal?
For Mr. Vavrek's information, I was at all of the Board of Education budget meetings. And this continues his narrative, which I think he made up relative to what I do in office. You need to understand that the first selectman only has limited ability with the Board of Education because they have their own laws and structures that allow them to run almost as an independent entity once they get their budget passed. I'm sorry,
that's time. Okay.